Look at Fenway. 77 inches of snow in the last 17 days, and they're going to get some more here this weekend. Peter Gammons, who he's got that mansion in the Cape. He can't get there. He's in downtown Boston. Pete, welcome. How are you today, okay?
Pretty good. Well, Fenway is 1.7 miles from my house in Brookline, so we have about the same amount of snow. I can't see my neighbor's house, so
that's how. Now, I read a story in the New York Times yesterday about the Boston transit system and how it's old and dilapidated to begin with, but it has been an absolute disaster trying to get people to work in downtown these last 17 days. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. They had to shut it down for 2 days. And, you know, it's really tough. It's hard for people who work, you know, that work basically at minimum wage to be able to live in Boston or Brookline or Newton, someplace like that. They take the train, they take public transportation in. Well, they couldn't. There were like a dozen restaurants near my house in Brookline that were closed yesterday because people just couldn't get into work. I mean, it's been really, it's been an adventure, to say the least.
It is.
And I'm headed for Florida next Wednesday, and I just heard on the weather driving over here, we're expecting a major blizzard on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. No!
You can't wait to get on that plane. All right, that's number one. Number two, May of '68 is when Pete, Hall of Famer, graduated from Chapel Hill. So he was there in Dean Smith's first 7 years. His big recruit early was Larry Miller. Pete, what do you remember about the great Larry Miller, the lefty from Pennsylvania? Any recollections of him?
Yeah, he was a good friend of mine. He was a character. He was a great money player. I mean, he had the propensity to come up with these huge plays at the ends of games. Very physical guy. But what was most important, because when Dean first got the job for Frank McGuire, they were on probation. So he only had 3 scholarships. Miller was his first huge recruit. He got him where everybody thought he's from Catasauqua, PA. He was going to go to Duke. And he ended up going to Carolina, and that really turned it around. But Dean was a remarkable person. I mean, not only because of his civil rights work, his anti-war work, a lot of other things. The fact that he was really the father of analytics in sports, but he was so good to people. I mean, it didn't matter if you were Larry Miller or Charles Scott or a great player. There were people like me that wrote for the student newspaper that he took under his arm. I mean,
really?
I mean, there was a time Frank the Ford came down and was doing something with him, and I got a message at my fraternity, call Coach Smith. So I call him, you know, payphone, and go over, and he wants me to come over and have a sandwich while he's, you know, talking to Frank. He wanted me to be able to first meet Frank the Ford, which Frank doesn't remember, and I don't blame him. But just to see, this is the way the great journalists ask questions and interview. I mean, he used to push me, and I give him a lot of credit. I wouldn't have done what I have done for my career.
The Ford's doing a big story. He knows you're a journalism major, so he makes sure you show up to watch the interview. That's pretty darn good, is it not?
Well, I mean, but that was it. Dean was good to everybody. I mean, that was one of the things. He was very good to me. He really pushed me, and I'm glad that when we were starting the fundraising for to rebuild the baseball stadium there in Chapel Hill, that we were down there. And the first meeting was at a homecoming football game, and Dean insisted that B.J. Surhoff, who even though he was a baseball player, loved basketball. His father played for the Knicks. Dean had B.J. Surhoff and me sit with him in the athletic director's box, and it was the last time we were with him when he was really healthy. But I talked to him all the years when I was at the Globe. I covered college basketball and stayed in touch with him, and it is amazing that, I mean, I think back, and it wasn't just celebrity basketball players or guys who were going to help him win the ACC tournament or whatever. It was people like me that he just took you know, if he liked you, he cared about you. I always thought that he reminded me a lot of a prep school teacher.
Wow, that's tremendous, Pete. Good stories there. All right, let's turn our attention to baseball. A couple of things we need to get to. One, Moncada, what's his name? The shortstop from Cuba, who is going to be everybody loves him. Where's he going? What's the scenario? Where is he going to sign with? What can you tell me about that first?
Well, I talked to general managers from 3 different teams in the last 24 hours who would like to get in on this thing. And they say they have no idea. They think it's going to get done by the 25th of February, but they have no idea. Now, I think the Yankees are the favorites. I mean, Moncada's agent's wife's family's restaurant is over in St. Petersburg. And I think the Yankees tend to eat over there all the time, to eat the Cuban food. But he's an unbelievable talent, switch hitter, may or may not play shortstop. I mean, I always keep telling people, don't tie him to shortstop. I mean, after all, Corey Yastrzemski and Mickey Mantle were shortstops at one point in their professional careers, too. So he can move, but he's a physical specimen, switch hitter, 19 years old, probably take a year and a half to get used to American pitching and get used to assimilate into the American baseball culture. But in time, I mean, he's got a great deal of talent. And the thing that makes it hard for a small market team, and I know San Diego's talked a lot about it, but let's say you give him a $35 million bonus. You then have to pay the same amount in tax, and the tax is due in cash to the commissioner's office as soon as you sign it. It's going to be very hard for a small market team to be able to say, oh, here, Mr. Manfred, here's $35 million. I mean, that's if it's a $35 million bonus. But the other guy that's really interesting, I think, is there's this guy, Hector Oliveira, who he's 29 years old. He's been a great hitter in Cuba, even though he missed a couple of years at 12 and 13 with a blood ailment. But teams have been all over the place looking at him. And he's 29, but he's 6'2", 220, plays second, third. And yesterday he finished up his workouts in the Dominican. He's going to be cleared within the next week. The Dodgers had, Andrew Friedman was there, Josh Burns, all their scouting people. The Giants are very much in it. San Diego would like to be in it. There are probably, Oakland is definitely in it. He's going to be an interesting guy because even though he's older, he can really hit. He's got tremendous balance, bat speed. So he's going to be an interesting side. And unlike Moncada, he could probably he definitely could step in and play third and second right now in the big league. So he's a guy, if you're the Giants or the A's or particularly the Dodgers, he can be a guy in the pennant race right away.
All right, Steve. All right, Peter. Make sure you get out of that snow. Get to Florida on Wednesday, and we'll have some fun. Very good. Appreciate you coming on today.
Okay, thanks a lot.